Rich, hello.
Hello, Mike.
Hi. Richard Junod is an IT project manager with expertise in technology leadership and strategy planning. And I first met Richard when he invited me to speak at his very first PM Rockstars event. That went fantastically well. I met a couple of the speakers there whom I've invited onto this channel, so you'll be seeing some of them. And now PM Rockstars is rolling out, and Rich will be organizing events throughout 2021. And we'll tell you more about that at the end of this session. Rich has worked in the healthcare sector and the financial services sector, two environments which are both very fast paced and where data is king. And that's why I wanted to talk with Richard today about project reporting and how to get it right. Rich, welcome.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you for letting me have some time on your program. I really appreciate that.
It's a great pleasure, Rich. And I want to start just by understanding why, in your view, project reporting is important. Why should we care about it? In particular, because I know that a lot of project managers don't find it the most exciting part of the role. So why should we care?
Sure, that's a great question. And it also goes back to why are you doing the project? What is the value for it? And so it's good to get that information out on why you're doing it and where it stands. There was a reason why the business originally decided to go ahead with the project, and they had it prioritized with their business values. And it's good to get the message out for the promotion of yourself, for the promotion of your team, and the promotion overall for the business, so that they can see that there's progress towards their goal, towards their value. They can see that their team and resources are actively working and engaged in it. They can see if there's any issues that are preventing it from going forward. And so that you can be noticed as well as being able to be on top of the project that you have and showing that it's either going smoothly or it has some issues or you need some attention from senior management.
Yeah. So fundamentally, it's about good communication, giving people the information they need to do their job, I guess. And you've mentioned it's motivating, which I think is important in every project. There's one thing that strikes me that is important in some projects, but less so in others. And I don't know about yours, but I think project reporting for me is also part of the governance process. Does that matter in the kind of technology projects you deliver?
Exactly, yes. Project reporting is critical in a number of areas. So it's obviously, part of, you want to make sure that as you go through the life cycle of the project, that you're reporting where you are. You're reporting as you go through if there's different phase gates in the organization, or if you're going through different sprints. You want to report on where you stand, whether you're accomplishing everything that was planned out, and that you're accomplishing it on time and on budget. So you want to make sure that you're following the procedures for the organization in whatever format or methodology that they use.
Yeah, and we'll come on to, I suppose, the format and the methodology a bit later. But before we do that, I want to get a sense of what goes into a good project report, because now we know we've got to satisfy needs of communication. We've got to motivate people with some good news. We're putting stuff on record, which is part of the governance and possibly even triggering actions. So that's a lot of kind of purpose behind the report. So what do we need to put in it to make sure we can hit those kinds of purposes?
Sure. Well, it's best to know exactly what your audience is looking for and to ask them ahead of time or to find out what they have in terms of their communication style and how they consume information. Do they consume the information over a call? Is there a project status email? Is there a project status report? Do they use a tool like a project management tool like Clarity? And is there a template or format that they have? What are the definitions for their format? If they use a traffic light, for example, what is meant by red, what's meant by yellow, what's meant by green, and exactly what are the languages that they speak. So if you're speaking to technical team, it might be more of a technical type of status. If you're speaking to finance, it might be completely different, or business, or to senior management. So knowing the audience is key.
So what sort of things are you going to put in there? If I looked at one of your reports, what information would I get from it?
Sure. So at a high level, you want to give an overview of what's the name of your project and if there's any identification for it, and an objective. Why are you doing this project? So that everyone's clear on that and it's there for your senior management and that you're in alignment with them. You also want to show what the end date is for your project and any resources that are at a high level of your project, in particular your sponsor, the project manager, and the lead. And it may be advantageous to put on there the resources from the individual teams so that the management knows which areas are impacted, such as facilities or telephony or operations, and also show your finances. You want to make sure that you're showing the current spend and what your final budget is for that. And then you can go into more lower level details. You can go then to first your traffic light of whether the project is green, everything's good, all systems go. If it's yellow, if there's some issues or risks that might impact your project's timeline, it might impact your project's resources, or it might impact the costs on the project. And red means that's a blocker and you need management support for removing that.
Yeah.
Then you want to do your headlines, which would be a 3 bullet point of your accomplishments or management. If you have a yellow or green project, you want to ask management something, either for resources or letting them know that something needs to be signed, or that make them aware that there might be a delay. And then you get the green plan if it's not green. And then an update on your milestones. You want to go through and show that your key milestones are either on target or that the end date is in jeopardy. And if there is a date in jeopardy, then what the replan would be if you have that available. And then at the final part of it, and you want to keep this brief, is about 3 to 4 bullet points of your main risks or issues and mitigation plan and owners and dates for those.
Yeah. Yeah. Excellent. So we've got a kind of full report, and I like the way that you defined what you call red, yellow, and green. Here in the UK, we call it red, amber, and green, RAG status. I think every good project manager, every good project management organization will have its own definition of those levels that fit their needs. But I think the thing I'd emphasize is if you don't have a clear definition, then it becomes too easy to manipulate what is probably the single most political part of your report, because people will pull out the red, yellow, green status and they'll say, look, everything's green, that's great. And if you haven't got a firm definition that forces you to be honest about where your project stands, I think that's a risk.
Right, and it's a great point, because I actually worked for a large financial organization and they call it the RAG status. And then I a company and they called it red, yellow, green. And I had a hard time stop saying amber and saying yellow when it went to the organization. So you want to make sure you speak the organization's language, not only for the colors, but there might even be some other color for how do you report a project or a status that's planned, or if it's that's closed. There might be some color depending on the organization. And then in addition to that, what is meant by yellow versus red?
Yeah.
Is red mean that you're completely stopped? Or does red mean that you have a blocker for one individual phase? Or does it mean overall for the project? So make sure you're clear in that definition. And for organizations I've been at, overall project red means you're going to miss the project end date, or you're going to miss the budget for the project. And you can have individual reds and red, yellow means on individual milestones.
Yeah, that's very much the approach I've taken, and defining red, amber, or yellow, and green in terms of variances from plan or effect on contingency is a good way to do it, because then it becomes very binary. You are either red or you are yellow, because you have either gone above that level of overspend or delay, or you haven't. And I think that's really important. So there's a lot of data, and you've told us the things that would go into it. So now, what is your process for gathering this data and for then kind of presenting it. And I suppose we could divide this, because you've already alluded to the fact that you can do a report very much in an old-fashioned, let's say, analog way of gathering the data and preparing a document, or you can kind of assemble it using some form of project management information system, whatever software you use. So let's start with the old school. And I don't know whether you're still doing it that way or whether you've moved on in your particular employer, but how do you go about creating your report from scratch?
Sure. And there's a lot of different ways to do this, but I'll focus on first thing you want to do is you want to make sure that you're gathering the information from the appropriate sources. And one of the key sources that is closest to the data is your project team. Yeah. So I find that depending on the project, you want to have regular status meetings with them. And for agile projects, you might have a daily stand-up meeting where you gather information. For other traditional projects, you might have a weekly status meeting. And you want to get input and ask questions from your team members. And you want to input key documents such as your project plan on where your milestone stands, the progress towards them. And that could be either in a tool like Microsoft Project, or it could be, in a backlog or a sprint log or a spreadsheet, or it could be a project management tool like Clarity, for example. And you want to update those tools on a regular basis, usually at least weekly, and make sure that your documentation is current. So you can pull that information in, either from status reports from your team members or during the status meeting. Then you also want to update any risks, actions, issues, and decisions, which is what's called a RAID log. And you want to make sure that you are keeping current on what the progress is for those risks, actions, issues, and decisions. You want to make sure that there's someone assigned to it. There's a mitigation plan for those, and that the date is there and the date is current, and staying on top of that. And then in addition to that, you want to make sure you highlight any accomplishments from your team. So your team's actively working, and a lot of times the status is focusing on the issues, but you want to give kudos to your team when you've completed a phase, when you completed a project, when you completed a milestone. You want to call those out and make sure they're documented as well. And then in addition to that, you'll also have challenges that might be lessons learned for other projects, and you want to update your lessons learned database and repository, and not wait until the end of a project to do that, because you'll probably forget 90% of the lessons that you've learned. Update that continually, at least on a weekly basis, but preferably as soon as you know that you've overcome an obstacle or you've hit something that might be useful for either another project or even another phase in your own project. So they're key tools. And how you start that is you can use in the old, and I will say in the beginning, most people do their initial project status with a tool like Excel or PowerPoint. And so you can put that into an easy one-pager. I wouldn't make it over complicated. I would put everything on one page, and so you can use that. Or if you have a tool like Clarity or another project management tool, update that repository, and then that allows the stakeholders to see it at a glance and to be able to do regular reporting off of that.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think one thing I've learned from your description is something that's never occurred to me. I agree entirely the importance of having lessons learned, the process running throughout the project rather than waiting to the end. But I've always had it as almost a standalone part of a team meeting, and never thought to integrate it into the reporting process. But of course, it's during the reporting process that you are thinking about what the data is telling you, and it is the perfect time to then reflect on what that means in terms of lessons learned. So I love that. I think that's really good. And I think the other thing that struck me as you were talking is whether you're using, as you described it, Excel, PowerPoint, some sort of, if you like, productivity tool to document your status, or whether you're using a report from a project management system. Going back to your earlier comment that you need to speak with your stakeholders, particularly your senior stakeholders, about what information they want. The other thing that I think is important is, as much as possible, you should be customizing the way you present the information to meet their needs. What do they want up front? Do they prefer lots of charts, or do they want lots of narrative? And meet the needs of your stakeholders, and they are less likely to complain about the very same information. You present it in one way and it just goes into their brain and they smile. If you present it in another way, it doesn't compute for them because it doesn't suit them. And that can mean having a report in with has a bit of redundancy to meet the needs of different stakeholders. So I like that. So you did mention the importance of providing a summary, and my experience, and I don't know about yours, is that there are a lot of people who pretty much only read the summary unless it flags something in their mind. So what thoughts have you got about producing a really effective project summary?
Sure, that's a great question, because the worst status meetings I'm on is where people ramble on and they go on, and you have 60 project managers looking to give a status in a 1 hour meeting, and someone's taking 15 minutes, and you're not going to get through everybody. So I would prepare ahead of time what points you want to communicate and write that down, and prepare different scripts. Prepare a 2-minute script and a 30-second elevator script. The reason for that is because you might get tapped on the shoulder before COVID when you're in the office and your manager was there, or a senior executive, and they may ask, what's the status of this project? And you should be able to say something real brief and tell it to the point, clear, concise, and give them an update on the status.
Yeah.
And even on Zoom calls now, when you're on, even more so probably, because everyone is on and they're looking to make sure that they have more interaction with you and more attention. You want to make sure that you have your points real clear. So I would say first, write down, after you have your status meeting, the minutes. Yeah. And several bullets, and then take those minutes at the end of the week when you have your project status, and take the key 3 highlights there and rehearse it. Say a 30-second elevator pitch, and then also have enough extra points if they ask additional questions, or if you have time to talk them over.
Yeah, I like that. And actually, what I think is quite useful, if you are going to prepare a short elevator pitch, and again, I've not thought about this in the context of project management, but did think about it in terms for another client in terms of marketing and sales, is if you've got that 30-second elevator pitch, have it typed out, and at the end of it say, and I will paste this into the chat so that everyone can see it. And that way you're sure that whoever's taking notes isn't going to retype it. They're just going to cut and paste what you've written. So it gives you that assurance that they've really got what you said and intended them to say, and it becomes helpful to everyone else. If someone, as we zone out occasionally, and they miss it, they can go back and they can just reread what you said. So I like the idea of preparing in advance. Yeah, and I always think the story you want to tell in that 30 seconds or that one paragraph at the top of the printed document is fundamentally dictated by the action you need the most important readers to take. Yes. If you need the most important readers to relax, then that you lead with good news. If you need the most important readers to turn their attention to one aspect of the project or the relationship with a certain stakeholder, that's the thing you mention. So that's exactly the question I always ask.
And it's good to put into a status, no management action needed.
Yeah.
To set the expectation that everything's good. Yeah. And that no action is needed. And then when you do need an action, put that in there as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's a great tip. That's a great tip. And extending it, it's also a great tip for your emails as a project manager. The subject line, if your subject line says action needed, then the people who get it know what they're getting. And I'm a big fan of making email a better platform, because we do still use it, no matter how much project managers are using Slack and similar tools now.
Yes.
We do use email, and it is still the worst form of communication, and we need to make it better. There's been some really fantastic stuff here, Richard, but before I let you go, I'd like to see what your final thoughts are for practical tips and advice for our audience from your own experience.
Sure. Is it okay if I give 5 Rockstar project status reporting tips?
5 Rockstar tips? It is.
Okay, great.
We're counting now.
So the first one is know what your audience wants, right? So how do they consume information? What are their definitions of success? What format do they use? And what templates do they use? So know what your audience wants. Number 2, know what outcome you want ahead of time. So do you need resources? Do you need to extend the project end date? Do you need a sign off on the contract? Or do you want them just to be aware of a risk? Or do you want to just let them know everything's good? So know what outcome you want ahead of time. The third is document your status. Review with your team, pull information from project tools, update your documents in the repository, including your lessons learned. So document your status. Fourth is keep it simple. Be concise, don't ramble on. No more than 3 bullets for your top headline, and no more than 3 to 4 risks or issues, and remove all those acronyms from your report. And then 5, prepare. Write down what you're going to say, practice a 30-second elevator pitch, and also add additional information if they ask you for additional questions. Anticipate those questions ahead of time, and then review with your team, a peer, or your manager prior to your status meeting. They're my 5 Rockstar reporting project status tips. Know what your audience wants, know what outcome you want ahead of time, document your status, keep it simple, and prepare.
Brilliant. And talking rock stars, I think there will be people who will want to find out more about what you're doing and what PM Rockstars is and what they can gain from it. So can you tell us a bit about what you're up to as outside of your day job, delivering projects, and how people can engage with you?
Sure. Thank you, Mike. So Project Management Rockstar is to give information to thought leaders in project management and to make sure that we have a community of project management leaders that are looking to increase their knowledge. I believe that if you learn more, you earn more. And by learning more in project management, you increase your marketability, you can increase your salary, you can increase the rates that you charge as a consultant. And I'm looking to gather a community together of different project managers that are looking to learn more from the best. And I consider you one of the best there, Mike.
Thank you. Great. So how can people actually access PM Rockstars? Where should we go?
So our website is pmrockstar.com. That's pmrockstar.com. And we will be having summits monthly over the rest of the year in 2021. And feel free to get on this site to register for any upcoming summits. The summits are free. And so we encourage all project managers to attend. And if you have any questions, also get on our distribution list and join in our conversation.
Fantastic. Great. Well, I should put some notes in the description below as well for people who want to just click a button and click a link and go there. And with that said, all that remains is to say thank you very much, Rich. It's been absolute delight having you on the show. Thank you very much for all of your tips.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it.
It's been a pleasure. Please do give us a thumbs up if you like this video. I'll be creating loads more great project management content, so please subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of it. And I'll look forward to seeing you in the next video.